to the Rotary Club in Milwaukee. I am Club President Darren Miller, President and owner of JM Construction. As is our tradition, we will start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll start off with a bit of club business. First, Tom Gale, Senior Advisor with SVN Heinz Commercial Real Estate, will give our invocation.
Thank you, President Darren. Merciful God, we ask that you give our leaders the wisdom to guide our nation and the world out of the current economic crisis. Help us to protect the poor and all of those who are struggling during this difficult time. Provide for their needs and give them hope. Open new opportunities for them and furnish the resources they need to live with dignity. Encourage those who have enough to share essential resources with those who lack the necessities of life, and to do so humble and grateful with loving hearts. And may the medical and scientific community come up with a treatment, if not a vaccine, to get us through this pandemic. Absent of quick fixes to all of the above, please give us the wisdom and patience to persevere. Amen.
Thank you, Tom. So I'm extremely glad to welcome all of you in person and to our virtual audiences today. We realize that we've had some hiccups with the live stream over the last couple of programs, but we do believe we've been able to correct those issues. Whether you're here in the hall or watching live on YouTube or watching later at your convenience, we expect you to have a quality program. If you are viewing remotely, you may wonder what Memorial Hall looks like these days. So Michelle is going to take a moment to give us a quick look around the room. If I was better at social media, I'd try to do this myself, but we'll rely on this in the short term. Some of you have asked about the HVAC system in the building. The War Memorial Center has purchased the highest level high-efficiency particulate air filter, or HEPA filter, capable of working with this system. It's 95% MERV 14 filters. You can read about this and other health practices implemented by the War Memorial in the weekly emails. It is time for our next book read and discussion series. We will be reading Things That Make White People Uncomfortable by Michael Bennett. For those who do not know, Mr. Bennett is a Super Bowl champion, a 3-time Pro Bowl defensive end, a fearless activist, a feminist, a grassroots philanthropist, an organizer, a change maker. He is also one of the most scathingly humorous athletes on the planet. And he wants to make you uncomfortable. Bennett adds his unmistakable voice to the discussions of racism and police violence, Black athletes and their relationship to powerful institutions like the NCAA and the NFL, the role of protest in history, and the responsibilities of athletes as role models to speak out against injustice. Conversations will be led by fellow Rotarian Paula Pennebaker and will take place on Wednesdays via Zoom from 4 until 5:30 p.m. More information can be found in the email coming out after lunch, so stay tuned for that. Those of us who tuned into this past week's Thursday Snack program had a chance to learn about the Minority Health Film Festival. The program is now up on our YouTube channel. The Rotary Club of Milwaukee is a proud sponsor of the film Charm City, a documentary on violence prevention in Baltimore. You can find out more information about the festival at mkefilm.org. We also have a few complimentary tickets, so contact Michelle if you're interested in one of those. This Thursday, our snack program will feature Rotarian Anthony Mchenry, CEO of Milwaukee Academy of Science. He will discuss reopening and returning to school during COVID-19. Anthony will introduce our speaker today, so you'll have a chance to meet him in just a minute. For those who are missing the interactions with fellow Rotarians, our informal Thursday programs are a great way to see and talk with one another on Zoom. I know I've enjoyed the conversations and learning about different things in our community and what we're doing during the pandemic. This Thursday, 30 minutes prior to the start of the program, or at 11:30, we'll open up the Zoom meeting so that anyone who's interested in connecting more with their fellow Rotarians will have a chance to informally chat before the program. Once again, Rotary is proudly sponsoring Hike Milwaukee, a fundraising event for the Urban Ecology Center and the Milwaukee Rotary Centennial Arboretum. That will run on September 27th until October 3rd. Since we're in the middle of a pandemic, the event will be spread out across the course of the week. Participants can sign up for a hike of their choice with a maximum of 10 people per hike. Specifically for Rotary, there are 4 scheduled hikes, 3 at the Milwaukee Rotary Centennial Arboretum and 1 along the lake, leaving from the War Memorial Plaza after our Tuesday lunch. Each of the Arboretum hikes will have a focus, 1 on birds, 1 on wildflowers, and 1 on trees, and a virtual hike led by Caitlin from the Urban Ecology Center, which will be podcasted at any time. Click on the link in this morning's email if you're interested in more about Hike Milwaukee. If you're joining us on YouTube today, please use the chat to ask your questions or text your questions to the number you see in the chat box. The questions will be relayed to to the speaker in the hall. And now I'd like to introduce fellow Rotarian Anthony Mchenry, CEO of Milwaukee Academy of Science, to introduce our program.
It's an honor for me to introduce our guest speaker today. Growing up in a working class family in Milwaukee's 53206 neighborhood, David was no stranger to hardship. As a child, David's family moved around frequently, often as a result of evictions. While still in high school, David served as a community justice coordinator with Urban Underground, giving him his start in community organizing. He joined AmeriCorps when he turned 18 and worked with several other community organizations, including Project Return, Safe and Sound, COA Youth and Family Centers. David also worked as a legislative aide for the Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors in the Wisconsin State Senate. David was motivated by the public servants around him to forge his own path in elected service and served 2 terms as the representative for the 17th Assembly District. As a representative, David sat on the Energy and Utilities, State Affairs, Workforce Development, and Transportation Committees and was the ranking member of the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee. He served as the chair of the Milwaukee delegation, the chair of the Black Caucus, and the co-chair of the Black and Latino Caucus. He also served on the board of directors of both the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority, WHEDA, and the Outreach Community Health Centers. David is a member of numerous community organizations, including the ACLU, Milwaukee Urban League of Young Professionals, and the Milwaukee NAACP. He attended Bayview High School, UW Milwaukee, and currently lives in Milwaukee with his wife Erica and his 3 beautiful young daughters. He was elected to serve as Milwaukee County Executive on April 7th, 2020, and was sworn in on May 4th, 2020. Please welcome Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley.
Feels good to take that mask off. How's everybody doing this afternoon now? All right, tough crowd. Thank you so much, Anthony, for your introduction. Thank you for allowing me to be here and really talk. I was born and raised in this city, and I love this city. I love this county. I love this community. And it always comes with a lot of different challenges. And I want to, before I really go into my remarks, everybody always tell me, David, you picked a hell of a time to run for office. And they're right. But I like to think that I didn't pick this time. The times have chose me. When we think about everything that's going on right now in our world, it really takes all of us really leaning on one another to get over this pandemic. But I would say it's going to take us to continue to lean on one another to get through it all, to make sure that we're in the best position possible post-pandemic. So when I took office, I said my vision for Milwaukee County is to achieve racial equity. And by doing so, Milwaukee County will become the healthiest county in Wisconsin. Achieving racial equity is a goal in Milwaukee County because for generations, we've prioritized racist policies and practices that produce poor health outcomes for all of our residents. In order to do this, we need to shift the bulk of our focus on upstream strategies that prevent poor outcomes for everyone in our community. When our key service groupings work well for our residents, the results are fantastic. We're able to provide independence for our county residents and assist them with the relief that they need, especially during these times. But unfortunately, this isn't true for all of our residents. Those who are either intentionally or unintentionally disadvantaged by generations of policies and practices that have taken place here in Milwaukee County government. Milwaukee County is the second unhealthiest county in the state. The second, yet we are the largest. And several studies done over the last decade show that the difference in health outcomes are a direct result of social health determinants like income and educational status, which impact the life expectancy in most health status measurements. And for generations, governments at all levels have unequally distributed healthcare access, opportunities for high-wage jobs, and educational access. And Milwaukee County is no exception. As Anthony mentioned, I know all too well the story of economic and housing insecurity. Me and my family were evicted at least 3 times within a 2-year span because my mother did work. She just wasn't making enough hourly in order to pay her wages. And as a young child growing up in that situation, it's hard to have a stable mindset when you don't even know where you're going to lay your head at night. And when you talk about tackling problems such as this, there is no easy answer. But it is familiar to me, and it's familiar to thousands of people, especially right now during the COVID-19 pandemic, who are literally stressing about how they're going to keep a roof over their head in the next couple of months. But part of the answer deals with really confronting the effects of, for example, racist redline policies that have prevented people of color from living in certain parts of this community. We've also discouraged real investments in some of these areas. And so when we talk about investing in upstream, it's really about dismantling many of the policies and practices that are much older than me, and for some of you, much older than you all. If we move upstream, the progress the county can make, we can literally improve all the health outcomes for all of our residents. And it will last well beyond my time serving as county executive. And that's one of the reasons why our first strategic plan in 20 years focuses explicitly on racial and health disparities here in Milwaukee County. And we're focusing on 3 strategic areas. Intentional inclusion. We want to make sure that the leaders and the managers within Milwaukee County government represent our community, represent who we are and what we make up. We want to make sure that we're bridging the gap. And that means that we have to prioritize resolving many of our racial disparities by making it easier to access the services that so many people need. And not just so we can meet the needs of that one issue, but the holistic person and their families. But more importantly, we have to invest in equity. Investing the resources in our residents and really putting our money where our mouth is when it comes down to who we are investing in. And while we're creating this 2021 budget, that is literally at the center of all of our minds. We want to make sure that we use the same we look through that racial equity lens and how we're going to be investing. We're working to bridge the gap and prioritizing resolving many of our health disparities. Our Department of Health and Human Services has been a leader in this effort by working to ensure that we're tailoring our services to meet individuals' needs. And these needs span across the lifespan of care. And we want to promote their dignity regardless of their race, gender, or socioeconomic status. We're working towards a no wrong door model. Under this model, residents who access one program can access information about all of our programs within DHHS, no matter what county facility they are touching. We need to have a one-stop shop for so many of folks here within Milwaukee County. Too many people are making too many phone calls for services and they get lost in the shuffle. We can't have that anymore. Instead of having to contact several different siloed divisions within all of our different departments, we will have no wrong door to make sure that everyone is receiving the services that they need. However, and many of you know this, we are facing a structural deficit, and we have been for so many years, at least a decade. We have seen a $20 million structural deficit for the past 10 years within Milwaukee County government. And when you look at our budget, which is $1.4 billion, over 70% of our local tax dollars literally support state-mandated services. And our options for increasing revenues are extremely limited, and none of us like it. None of us wants to see our taxes get raised. These mandates are growing literally twice as fast as our ability to pay for them. Without any change, by 2027, state mandates will consume all of our local tax dollars, leaving no funding for local priorities. By 2027. I don't know about you, but I truly believe that local tax dollars should fund local priorities, not just state services. And we're prepared to weather this storm, as we have again and again. But we're utilizing this vision of becoming the healthiest county as our guide. But the only way to achieve our vision and to continue to provide these services that county residents rely on is by securing a long-time funding solution. We can rebalance this uneven funding structure. We can share the cost of services with commuters and visitors to Milwaukee. But more importantly, we can also provide the largest property tax relief in recent memory. And we can invest in our communities. And this is through a 1% sales tax that we have been working with many of the businesses in this region. I'll be the first to tell you that this is not the easiest job I've had. It is not. Local governments right now are literally on the front lines of this pandemic. And it's limiting our ability to help out not only our residents, but folks like yourselves, because we also need to be supporting our businesses. That's one of the reasons why we have created community support programs here within Milwaukee County. We've put $10 million into eviction prevention. We put $2 million into mortgage assistance. And to make sure that we can still stay ahead of the homelessness rate here in Milwaukee County, we're making sure to acquire buildings so we can put people up if need be, to keep them safe. But we're also making sure to create a program, and I may be jumping the gun a little bit, but we're going to put $7 million into helping small businesses throughout Milwaukee County, where you'll be able to apply for $20,000 loans to be able to make sure that you can rebuild, restart your business, and make sure you can pay for the wages of those who work for you. I'll be the first to tell you that we need to wear a mask. We need to watch our distancing. And we need to wash our hands. But more importantly, we have to lean on one another to make sure that we get through this pandemic. When I first ran for this seat, it was all about building a bigger and more diverse table. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, business owner, or a member of an organized labor union. I need you at the table. Because when you think about what is happening in this community, partisanship goes at the state level. But if you're my neighbor, this is about how do we help out one another to make sure that we have a safe and viable community. And that's one of the reasons why I'm excited to be the Milwaukee County executive. I'm not the type to throw out bombs. I will tell you how I feel, but I don't need to be disrespectful. We need to have some hard conversations because we're in the middle of two pandemics. One is called COVID-19, and the other one is racism. What COVID-19 has done is put a pause around all of us and made us make sure that, and forced us to really have this conversation about race because of what we've been seeing throughout this country. And I have to say that I'm inspired by the young people, by our businesses, by everyone who is coming to the table and saying that we need to have this conversation, and we all have a role to play. And we all do. Every role isn't for everyone, but there's always a role for someone. And it's time that we get in our lanes and figure out how do we move this community forward. Because I'll be the first to tell you that, yes, I am the Milwaukee County Executive. And my goal is to make sure that Milwaukee County is in the best position possible. But I don't believe that we can do that as Milwaukee County alone. We have to have partnerships. We have to build relationships. We have to bridge the gap. Being in the legislature for 4 years, being in the state capitol for 8, the one thing that I have learned is that when I come to the state legislature or come to my colleagues with a problem, if I'm only talking about Milwaukee, it's dead on arrival. But when you look at the issues facing Milwaukee County, they are not unique to just Milwaukee County. Many counties and many municipalities across the state of Wisconsin are feeling the financial burden. They may not be feeling it like Milwaukee, but if you actually scaled up that community, they'll realize that they're in the same boat as Milwaukee. So the goal is to make sure that we're reaching out to everyone, that we're building bridges no matter what your political affiliation is, no matter where you stay, who you look like, who you love, and what kind of business you own. This is about making sure that we lean on one another, not only to move this county, but to move this full region forward and be in the best position post-pandemic. Many jobs have been lost. Many businesses will not come back. But it's up to us to make sure that we can build the capacity of our workforce, build the capacity of many of our businesses to make sure that we build back better than we were before. I just want to say I appreciate this opportunity to be your Milwaukee County Executive. I'm not only the youngest, but I'm the first African American to be elected to this seat. And that comes with a huge burden. I know I have magnifying glasses looking at me every day. But I love it because I get a chance to speak to individuals like you all and build relationships and build and create plans to actually move all of us forward. And I believe that together we will do exactly that, not only for Milwaukee County and this region, but for the whole state of Wisconsin. And we will achieve racial equity and remove Milwaukee County from that blacklist of being one of the most segregated places in the community, in the country. So with that, I'll shut up because I feel like I'm being a politician now and talking, and allow folks to ask any questions they may have.
This is a little bit of a different practice. Oh, God, we're going to applaud our speaker. For those in the room, this is a little bit of a different practice for us to bring the microphone out to the audience, but we want to make sure that people in the virtual audience are able to hear the questions and not have any dead space. So who has the first question? I'll have the microphone on this side of the room and Martinka on the other.
Hi, this town is crying for leadership, and it hasn't had it for years. And we had riots and looting and whatever, and I wasn't sure what you were doing during that time. The paper reported that you were kind of missing in action, but I don't know if that's fair or not, but that's what was said.
Well, I can definitely tell you it wasn't. So before I got to where I am, I was a community organizer. I was actually inside many of those protests, making sure that it was actually safe because I knew many of those organizations and people who are actually organizing many of those protests. I think that when we think about leadership and what needs to happen, we always think about what we should tell other people what not to do. But you got to remember that many of the people who are organizing and part of these marches have not been a part of anything organized before. And I think at this moment, You have people who are saying you got folks who are being radical. And they are. But I'll be the first one to tell you that coming from where I come from, growing up on 23rd and Burleigh, I need to make sure that I'm in the trenches with those individuals to help them understand where radical meets rationale. Because there are some things that we need to change when it comes down to policies. And we're doing that within Milwaukee County. But I would tell you that I will never be missing when it comes down to any civil unrest. I'm always in the thick of things and will continue to be in the thick of things. But we all need to understand that when we see protests, when we see individuals who are unruly, that we don't paint all the protesters the same way. Just like if we see an officer that is being unruly, we shouldn't paint the whole police department in the same way. And so we have to find a way, a sweet spot for us to have some really tough conversations, particularly around the civil unrest that we're seeing, and making sure that we're doing what we need to do, not only to keep the community safe, but also to keep our officers safe at the same time.
Thanks for joining us. On the 1% sales tax, so that seemed to have some momentum pre-COVID and seemed to be going in a positive direction, negative direction, whatever you want to say, but it seemed to be going forward. Where does it stand right now? Is it in the same form that it would have been? And in particular, is there a focus of where that revenue would go, or would it be kind of general revenue if it were passed?
Good question. So we were able to get a hearing with Representative John Mako from the Green Bay area, and it seems like we are on a good path to continue to have these conversations. Nothing will happen until 2021, though, because they're still on a break and going through their elections. I think we're actually in a better position to actually bring to actually focus on that sales tax. You have some people who will say that that's regressive, but to continue to increase our property tax, it was also regressive when you have so many people who may be on fixed incomes that are on their own home. But we're also talking about putting in the largest property tax relief for many of the residents throughout Milwaukee County. And I would say that conversation is actually expanding. When we were in that hearing, Representative Mako talked about the fact that we have to diversify our revenue. And we do. We can't continue just to operate on property taxes, because then that means that we only tax ourselves and we never tax anybody who are coming to visit. And so we're on the path. We're working with MMAC right now and other partners, not only here within Milwaukee County, but across the state, to make sure that this is not just a Milwaukee County problem. We're turning this into a 72-county strategy because other municipalities are in the same boat as we are and want to figure out ways to diversify their revenues.
David, over here on your right.
Okay.
Appropriately
Oh, we got so she's not gonna get the type of workout I thought.
First of all, congratulations on your appointment, and I think that everybody in this room and our club wishes you nothing but success and hope you fulfill every single one of your goals and dreams. It would benefit all of us. You know, we were so excited about the DNC coming here because we knew all the wonderful things it was going to create, and many of your concerns that you want for the citizens in terms of equality, a lot of those things would have happened had the DNC actually taken place. It didn't. And it's nobody's fault, but it didn't. What we could use, though, is the influx of new industry. Bring people from out-of-state organizations. This is kind of an insurance capital here in Milwaukee with all the resources we have. We have schools that can teach virtually any kind of trade that would be necessary. Des Moines is a kind of the center of insurance, which is in the middle of nowhere. If you've ever been in Des Moines, it's nowhere. Milwaukee has a whole lot more to offer. If we could attract another insurance company here or other industries that we still have lots of support for, I don't know what, it's probably not totally your job, but it'd be a great thing for your administration to be able to do. Do you have a goal of bringing industry and more jobs to Milwaukee?
Absolutely. I think that we have to bring more jobs, and it's not just to the county, but again, the whole region. I always joke around the fact that if Milwaukee was not here in Wisconsin, we'll be another Iowa. So we have to really focus on bringing new industry here, but also making sure that we focus on the workforce that is currently here. I mean, when I was in the state legislature for the past 4 years, the thing was that we could not find a workforce. We could not find bodies to fill these jobs. And, my dad is an electrician by trade. And I always think about when he used to tell me, go into the trade, son, make a lot more money. And there are days where I kick myself in this butt and say, I should have got to do to the trades. But I say that to say that we all have a role to play in bringing businesses here. And I'm utilizing the DNC as a way to do that. The DNC did not come here and bring their convention. But Milwaukee County, Milwaukee in general, we have so much to offer. We're a culturally rich community. We have over 158 parks. We have some beautiful golf courses that many of you have been utilizing throughout this whole pandemic. We have a lot to sell. And the fact that the DNC did not come here, I think we have an opportunity to talk to many of these corporations who host different types of conventions throughout the state, throughout the country, and say, come to Milwaukee. Come look at our Bradford Beach, the most accessible beach in America. Come look at all of our parks. Come look at all of our restaurants and bars. I'm even telling people to come look at our domes. Because I've recently learned that when the DNC was coming here, and I had the opportunity to meet some of the folks who were securing rentals for many of the groups, they wanted to see the domes. They really wanted to see the domes. Now, having the domes in our backyard, some of us will say, well, what are you going to do with the domes? But it seems like more people appreciate the domes outside of this city and outside of this county than we do. And I think right now it's about how are we marketing? How are we working with the state of Wisconsin and many of the local municipalities to convince many of the folks to come here? Because I think that we have a great atmosphere, we have a great workforce, and we have a great environment and community in general that I think is just inviting for a lot of folks. But they just haven't had the opportunity to come here. A lot of people didn't know about Milwaukee until Giannis, right? And so we have to do everything that we can to continue to sell us to folks across the state of Wisconsin. But I would also say mostly sell our what we offer also to Illinois, because I think it's an opportunity to bring many of those businesses here.
So a lot of our problems seem to stem on the discrepancies between the state and the county in terms of financing. I would think we have a tremendous amount. I would think this would have a tremendous amount of clout for us in Milwaukee County. You meet with the leaders of the other municipalities within this county on a regular basis, as you do with the state, all the rest of the counties in the state. And do those people help you get clout in Madison?
Absolutely. So I was in Madison for 4 years. And we used to have a joke. I used to joke around with Robin Voss and say, I'm probably your favorite Democrat. And that's because as a Democrat, when I was in the state legislature, it was important for me that it didn't matter what was behind your name, it was about getting the work done. And I'm excited to say that we're doing exactly that as a county administration. I've already had meetings with the Washington County Executive. We had a meeting set up actually between myself, Waukesha County, Ozaukee County, and the Racine County Executive. Unfortunately, it was actually the same night as the Kenosha unrest, so we had to reschedule. We were constantly in communication because I think what folks do understand is that with me being at the helm here, we're not always going to agree, but we can have a conversation. We can find ways to bridge the gap because, again, it's not just a Milwaukee County issue. We haven't been intentional and strategic enough to build these relationships for the long term to actually bring the resources that we absolutely need.
I'm going to ask a question that's coming in on the chat here from Chris Hendricks. The increase in the sales tax, if secured, would not help the 2021 budget and maybe not even 2022. How are you tackling the revenue crisis in that interim while achieving these important goals?
We're taking a hard look at the budget. I mean, when you think about all the municipalities, and not just municipalities, businesses, families, we all have to take a hard look at our budget and see what our priorities are. And so that's exactly what we're doing right now. We just finished up our third town hall on the 2021 budget. We also got $77 million related to CARES funding, and we're trying to leverage every dime of that to make sure that the dollars that we have collected locally can be spread out for those next couple of years. Now, I would tell you that facing the $42 million budget gap that we're facing this year, I think that we're going to be okay. I'm not stressing that much. But it's about what's going to happen next year. And no, the sales tax is not the end all be all, and it will not be the silver bullet in solving our problems, but it is something. And what we're going to do is we're going to have to look at some tough choices, making cuts to many of the programs that people rely on, making some cuts related to the sheriff's department, making some cuts related to our court systems. But that's just budgeting in general. But at the end of the day, we are going to continue to go to the state legislature and let them know that we need more revenue. And if they give us the tools that we need in our toolbox, we don't have to continue to go to the state capitol every 2 years and say we need more money. This is really about us being able to solve local problems with local solutions, which takes local resources.
We have another question over to the left.
Is this on? Yeah. County Executive Crowley, I don't know if you remember me, Jim Curlin, it's good to see you again. I'm the president of Beyond Vision, and you and the rest of the Democratic Caucus, from Milwaukee Democratic Caucus, came and visited us about 8 months ago. And
did y'all get that building?
What's that?
Did you get that building yet?
We have the building, and we're moving in the right direction. We should be under construction soon. So, as you know, we employ people who are blind, and our visually impaired employees depend heavily on public transportation to get to and from work and just live their lives. So there's concern on my part about budget problems because I know MCTS is a big expense. But I also know that a lot of people that live in the city are heavily dependent on transit system as well. Can you talk about what you think the future is for the Milwaukee County transit system?
Yes. So we have been making sure, again, we want to invest in equity. And that means making sure that people who do not have a vehicle can get to and from work, school, doctor. So I can tell you that looking at this current budget right now, there will be no changes to the Milwaukee County transit system. Now, when you think about next year, and granted, you have to thank the federal government for the CARES dollars that we've received, because that's how we're going to maintain our routes, our core infrastructure. But we are looking at what more can we do to make sure that there's almost bus rapid transit system that actually takes people to and from the jobs, no matter how far north or how far south or how far west or east that you are here in Milwaukee County. And so we're looking at how we can create that bus rapid transit system on the Wisconsin corridor right now that gets people out to Brookfield. But we're also looking at how we can utilize 27th Street to be able to get people to Amazon or get them to Oak Creek in the south side. But more importantly, getting them even to the north side where many of the jobs are in Glendale, Fox Point, River Hills, and Brown Deer. And so we're being much more intentional on how we set these routes up, not only to save us money, but to make sure that that core service that we provide will still be maintained.
In your view, which other counties nationwide might serve as a model for Milwaukee County going forward, and why?
So that's a good question. I would also say it depends. I think a lot of the times we look at Minneapolis, we look at St. Louis. You know, I think that we are very unique. We are in the top 50 metropolitan areas, but we lead in many of, if not all of the disparities here across the country. I can't point to a particular county because again, it depends on, you know, what department or what issues that we're looking at. So we've been working with, for example, Cook County, and I forget the county Houston is currently in right now, but looking at them when it comes down to criminal justice reform, because we've seen how they've reduced their prison population in their House of Corrections. But we're also looking at, you know, I think it was St. Louis when we're looking at their transit system. They went and did a full year where the bus system was free. Now, we don't have that type of resources, but it's something to look at to see if it's something that we could do in the future, or how can we tweak it to make it better to fit Milwaukee County. But it all depends on the issue. But we do work well, not only with the Wisconsin Counties Association, to make sure that we are having conversations here throughout the state. But I'm also a board member of the National Counties Association. And so we're constantly having conversations as county executives or chief judges throughout the state, throughout the country, to figure out what are some of those best practices. So it really depends on who we're talking to and what the issues are. Mm-hmm.
I don't see anything else on the chat except that one of the fun things about a virtual meeting is you have a wide audience, and we have an hello here from Todd Breton, who's visiting from the Sugar Land, Texas Rotary Club. He
How you
says,
doing?
great meeting, great discussion.
If you indicated that a lot of the expenses are mandated from the state, and obviously it's an unsustainable, I mean, Chris Abley talked to us and told us, where you're at because of the revenue stream is what it is.
Yeah.
So what about just telling the state, if they want you to do something, they got to pay for it? I did that in a little town in Berkeley, and every time they sent something down from Boston, I said no. And they asked who's responsible, and we got away with it. But I mean, it would be a crisis. But sometimes in the state, in this country, we don't solve problems until we create a crisis. Hate to say that.
No, I agree with you. I wish I could tell the state no. But, county government, we are technically an extension of state government. So we are responsible for administering all of those with state programs. And those state programs that we're talking about, a lot of the times come from the court system. So, everybody who works within the courthouse are county employees except for the judges. Except for the judges. So we have to make sure that when you think about us reopening, to make sure that courts can get back open, we are the ones that got to purchase the decals. We're the ones that got to purchase all the hand sanitizer and all the plexiglass and all of those things. And granted, I have a great relationship with our chief judge. And so we're able to work hand in hand with one another. But I can just imagine how that's not the case in some other communities. And so when the chief judge says, this is how we're going to operate, counties just have to do exactly what those chief judges are saying, because we took an oath that we will stand by the state constitution, the United States Constitution. And so we have to administer many of these programs. But most of these state mandates, a state mandate, where we're talking about, for example, like Marcy's Law, something that I support. But yet it's actually costing our county about $300,000 just to implement that law. And so when you think about other constitutional officers, because I set the budget, they have a job that they have to do and they're required to do. And so I just can't say, D.A. Chisholm, I know the state's saying that you have to do this, but I'm going to cut your budget and you're not, right? I don't have that luxury, because constitutional officers also have the ability to sue me to get their money, and they may get it a little bit more depending on what the court says. And so for me, it's about working with one another, but also, we can rail on the state of Wisconsin in the legislature or on the governor, but I have to work with these individuals in order to make sure that we maximize your tax dollars and maximize the ability to serve every county resident. And so I wish I could say no. There are times where I have told the governor no, but we still have to continue to forge through. This is definitely a tough time to be, a CEO or county executive. But we have to roll with these punches. We many of us have went back to the entrepreneurial mindset because we've had to adapt to the change in time, and we have to do that in government as well. But unfortunately, we don't have the luxury to tell the state legislature no.
I have a question here from our member Jenny Sefanich, who's the CEO of Progressive Community Health Center. And Jenny says the contract for WellPath to run health care for the jail runs out in April of 2021. Do you plan to contract the healthcare out again? Previously, there was talk about providing healthcare internally.
There was conversations about providing that healthcare internally, and there was I believe, a study that looked at the fact that it doesn't matter whether we do it internally or externally. It's about what oversight do we have. But further upon the study, we've learned that in order for us to take it on in-house, it would cost us a lot more, and we just can't afford to take that on. But when you look at WellPath, we've been able to forge a relationship and work well with them. When you think of it as a consent decree that was in place related to why we are contracting with them. But we're on a good path right now with WellPath. We're going to continue. Thank you so much. We're going to continue to work with them right now. But as far as in-house, I don't see that in the foreseeable future anytime soon.
Any more questions from the floor? Well, thank you. I'm sorry we brought water so late, but but thank you, County Exec Crowley. I guess we'll have Darren come up and.
Executive Crowley, thank you so much for being with us today. And in honor of leaders like you who speak to our club members, we will be making a donation to the YWCA of Southeastern Wisconsin, whose mission is eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, and freedom and dignity for all. Tune in this Thursday at noon for our snack program on Zoom to hear from fellow Rotarian Anthony Mchenry on reopening schools. I also invite you to join us next Tuesday to hear from Dr. Don Berwick, President Emeritus for the Institute for Healthcare Improvements, a leading authority on healthcare quality and improvement, and a professor at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Berwick will discuss the moral determinants of health and will be joining us virtually from Boston. The program will be started and streamed on Zoom and YouTube and will be streamed to Memorial Hall for those attending in person next week. Tomorrow, Wednesday the 15th at 11:30 a.m., we will have a Zoom reunion with our Serbian friends who came to Milwaukee in late September of last year to learn about wastewater and sewage treatment plants from the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewer District. If you'd like to join the call, you'll find info in the email on its way to your inbox as we speak. As a reminder, if you plan to attend in person, we'd like to see the RSVP to the office by 8 a.m. on Friday morning. Please see the link in this morning's email to RSVP for next week, Tuesday. And if you parked in the lot, make sure you take the validation voucher that's on the table. And also remember to maintain proper social distance on the way out of the hall today. Use both doors and try not to congregate outside the elevator. Use the stairs if you're able. Thank you for being here. This meeting is adjourned.